What we're going to do today is delve into Wireshark and actually create 3 different what are called Wireshark profiles. In my job in the Cisco Customer Proof of Concept Lab, I have to admit I really do jump around technologies. And so what I've set up is on our PCs here, we have a ghost image that already has profiles created. So you can easily and quickly shift from one vantage point to another vantage point and drill down into what you actually need to see for what you're troubleshooting. Wireshark is, to me, the feet in the street, the true reality. When troubleshooting a network, I think that it is important to gather the facts, collect the clues, follow the evidence, interview the witnesses, question the suspects, and find out who done it. Very, very key to me is what is truly happening on the wire. The wire is reality. The wire is what's really, really happening. So I use Wireshark a lot from a troubleshooting perspective, and I also do have to say that I've used it a great deal in just learning. When I first was learning BGP, MPLS, a lot of other things, it was much easier for me to look at a sniffer trace and follow the conversations. With that, we're going to go ahead and go right into it, creating 3 different Wireshark profiles. I also do like, originally I used to come to the wiki Wireshark a great deal. Didn't necessarily know how much I trust other websites, so wiki Wireshark I liked a lot. For our first one, we're going to go ahead and use this one right here, MPLS 2 level cap, which I've already downloaded. For the next one, we're actually going to do a GRE tunnel, and we're going to go over to packetlife.net, where there's a lot of captures. Jeremy has a lot of captures there. This is actually his page. And so he's got a lot of captures that people have put up here. So we're going to go ahead and use this one, this GRE cap, which is an ICMP encapsulated into a GRE tunnel. So we'll use that one for the tunnel. And then for the last one, we'll go ahead and use this one right here, ICMP across .1Q cap. Now again, what we're doing is, I already know going into this, we're going to set up profiles. So I've cleaned out the profiles on my laptop. We're going to go ahead and set up the profiles on my laptop. So we're going to start with MPLS. So let's open up Wireshark. Right now I actually have 1.12.0, came out extremely recently. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open the MPLS 2 level 1. Now again, I know I'm actually going to create profiles, so we're going to go ahead and start creating a profile. We're going to go to Edit, come down to Configuration Profiles, and what you'll notice is there's Default, Bluetooth, and Classic. Default actually has no color. You'll see that it's the one that's right behind it. For right now, since I don't want to have a lot of color on the screen, we're going to go ahead and use that one. Color's really more a personal choice and what you like to see, in my opinion, in your network and what you want to highlight. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to take default and we're going to copy it, and then we're going to call it MPLS. And click Apply and OK. Now the next thing we're going to do is, because of the fact that I already am familiar with this capture file that I downloaded, we're going to go to number 9, and we're going to see that number 9 actually has 2 MPLS labels in it. Even if you don't know what MPLS is, it's multi-protocol label switching. What's important to know is if there's 2 labels in here, we're probably doing some type of technology in the middle, and potentially a service provider network or a large enterprise that has some type of MPLS VPNs, either L3 VPNs or L2 VPNs. Basically, the outer label, the first label, is the transit header label. It actually gets swapped hop by hop on the way to the final destination. When it gets to the final destination, the inner label will be the VPN label. That should make sense to the end destination. In my environment, it's very common to have 2 labels when I'm doing service provider type labs. Now, the other key thing here is that this is probably taken in the core of the MPLS environment near a P router, probably coming into a P or provider router. So it has the two labels. Now, as you can see, the destination IP address right here is 10.34.0.1. The beauty about MPLS actually is multi-protocol label switching is that the device that we're going into doesn't have to know or care about who 10.34.0.1 is. It does not do a route lookup on that destination IP, nor does it look at the MAC address and figure things out. So what it actually does is it goes ahead and looks at this label right here, the transit header label, label 18, and it looks it up into its label information base and then makes a label switching decision. So in front of me, I don't necessarily have in this pane, I don't have anything that truly helps me understand in this P router what actually ended up happening with this packet. I'd want to know what the MPLS labels are. So I'd want to have that in this type of environment here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and come down here, expand that open. I'm going to go to MPLS label 18. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to apply as a column. Now when I apply it as a column, you'll see that not only 18 showed up, but 16 showed up as well. See, 18, 16. Now that may not be, while I understand MPLS, if I'm trying to explain it to somebody who is new to MPLS during a customer week, they may not understand MPLS. So 18, 16 may not help them visualize that one is the outer label and one is the inner label. This is actually by default. So let's go ahead and figure out what's going on here. So let's go into Preferences. Let's go into Columns. And what we'll notice here is that there is a 0 over here in field occurrence. And if I hover over that 0, you will see that field occurrence to use 0 equals all. Default. The default is all, which means we will put in that column all of the matching instances of that occurrence. Which again, honestly, isn't bad since I already know MPLS, but if this was for a customer, what I would probably do is I would actually come down here, and it doesn't really matter which one I do. I could have picked 18 again, or I could have done it a different way. And then apply column. Now I have two columns. I have MPLS label, MPLS label. Why did I do that? Because I know what I'm going to do next. Not that. I'm going to come in here in Preferences, and I'm going to go to Columns again, and I'm going to take the first one, and I'm going to call that Outer MPLS. And then I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to call this Inner MPLS. And then I'm going to come over here to Outer MPLS, and I'm going to say, and if we hover again, that I want, number one, I want the first occurrence. I want the outer one. And then for this one, I would like the second occurrence. So we're going to make that 2. So now if I click Apply, what we see is the outer MPLS label right here as 18 and their inner MPLS label as 6. And we did all that in our profile MPLS. Now, watch what happens. If I change this back to default, you'll notice that all of the MPLS labels are actually gone. A lot of times when I'm actually looking at a sniffer trace, it'll open up as default, and then I'll think, oh, I'm on a lab that has, this sniffer trace has a bunch of MPLS in it, or this sniffer trace has VLANs in it, or this sniffer trace has tunnels in it. And I will pick whatever the different profile is, which is exactly what I'm trying to do right now for my laptop. So the next thing, so if we switch it back to MPLS, voila, I get those two. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and switch and get out. We're going to close this one. And now we're actually going to open, because we've just made the MPLS one. So we've now made an MPLS profile. So I can always use that now if I have 2 MPLS labels. If I have 3 MPLS labels, it doesn't necessarily show that, but since I'm familiar with Wireshark, I know how to add a third. So now we're going to go ahead and go with tunnels. So we're going to create a tunnel one. So I'm going to open and grab the GRE tunnel one that we have here. And as we can see, this is very, very interesting, and it really surprised me the first time that I saw this in Wireshark. Actually, the first time I saw this in Wireshark was not technically a GRE tunnel. What it actually was it was a multicast register join. And it very much confused me. You can see if you look right here, this is confusing, right? The source IP is 1.1.1.1. The destination IP is 2.2.2.2. If we look down here in this pane, the source IP is listed as 10.0.0.1, and the destination IP is 10.0.0.2. So as you can see here, there's 1.1.1.1 and 2.2.2.2. So what I really want is I'd like to know both of them in the middle of the GRE. I'd like to see what's actually going on. So we're going to go ahead and go to Configuration Profiles, and we're going to actually not copy MPLS. So let's delete MPLS. Let's copy default. And so we'll call this tunnel, and then click Apply, and then OK. So let's see why that's actually happening. I have source IP, source MAC, destination IP, destination MAC. Clearly, I actually have two source IPs and two destination IPs. This is the outer one, this is the inner one. So again, we're going to go ahead and go to Preferences, go to Columns, and what you'll see here is source IP. It's very interesting. It'll actually just say network source address. So this isn't the way we actually want it. So what we're going to do is we're going to, because as you see, there's no 0, there's no nothing. So we're going to remove this, and we're going to remove this. And then I'm going to go ahead and click Apply, go back, and then I'm going to come over here, and I'm actually going to take this IP address right here, source IP, and I'm going to apply it as a column, and then destination IP, and I'm going to apply it as a column. And because I'm lazy, I'm going to go ahead and not go down to the next one because it doesn't matter anyway. So basically what I just did, or what it looks like I just did, and right now I actually don't care about the MAC addresses, but we'll fix that. So I made a mess here, didn't I? I made an absolute mess. So let's go ahead and fix that. Now, in my opinion, I don't really care at this point in time about the source and destination MAC addresses, but we'll go ahead and leave them there. So we'll put them in there, but we're going to go ahead and we're going to move it down. What I care about is the outside source IP and the outside destination IP. So if we come to source right here, so this is the custom source IP, then it actually has, we want the first occurrence, so it's the same thing as the MPLS, so we want the first occurrence because we want the outer. And then we actually have source, and we want the second occurrence here. And then we want to move this down actually. And then destination, and we want the second occurrence. Apply, okay. So now we have, now this is confusing, right? There's one thing I forgot to actually do. One thing I forgot to actually do, which I did for the MPLS, is to say inner outer. So let's go ahead and fix that. So this is actually the outer source, the outer destination, the inner source, and the inner destination. Now, there's a good possibility that this is actually GRE and I really don't care about the MAC addresses at all. So what we'll actually do is put them actually at the absolute end, just because it seems strange to go ahead and take them out completely. And there you go. But not quite, right? So we see the outer source IP, which is 10.0.0.1. We see the outer destination, which is 10.0.0.2. But technically, it's supposed to be GRE, right? GRE right here. And then 1.1.1.1, 2.2.2.2, and then ICMP. So I know this sounds really kind of sort of like a little nitpicky, but what I would probably do just to make sure that my mind handles this well, and also that I can actually have the customer see this, I'm actually going to do it this way. I'm going to have the outer source, the outer destination, the inner source, the inner destination. I might also consider doing some type of coloring rule. But now we have tunnel. Now watch what happens if I go tunnel and then I say default. Now if we do tunnel and then default, we only see, again, the 1.1.1, 2.2.2. If we change the profile to MPLS, well, there's no MPLS here. It looks a lot like default. But if we load up something that actually has a tunnel in it with a source and destination, inner and outer, then we actually get these columns. So far, so good. Okay, let's go ahead and get the VLAN one now, which is this one right here. So as we can see from this perspective, we have outer source, outer destination, inner source, inner destination. You can see that I still had the profile of tunnel on, which we don't want. So let's go back to default. Now what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and make a VLAN one. So configuration profile, we're going to copy the default one, and we're going to call it VLAN 1. So VLAN and singular, so we'll just leave it as VLAN, and then of course we also could make a VLANs for Q and Q. But for what we're doing here, we'll just make it VLAN. So what we're going to go ahead and do here is, as we can see, there is actually a VLAN in here. So we want to go ahead and we want to come in here. We're making a VLAN one, so what we want to do is we want to come here and we want to say, okay, we want the ID, and then we can just apply it as a column. Now because it's VLAN, we could have gone ahead and done it someplace else as well. So it says VLAN, which is just the ID. I don't really like the name by default that it has, which is just ID. And I also don't like the location of it. So we're going to go ahead, and this time we're just going to swing it over this way. See how that worked? So we're going to go ahead and swing it over that way. You can actually drag columns, and you'll see when we actually go to preferences that now the column has actually been moved. So as dragging that column went ahead and moved that column. So this is actually going to be VLAN ID. Apply and OK. So we've got the VLAN ID, we've got the source IP, we've got the source MAC, we've got the destination IP, and we've got the destination MAC. And now you see how to create your 3 different Wireshark profiles: MPLS, tunnel, VLAN. And you can probably create some more yourself. Other ones that I could potentially create are Q and Q VLAN, also ones that actually use the TOS or DSCP bits. And sometimes with the MPLS, I'll also do an MPLS experimental bit column. But that's it, and then we go back to our Wireshark, and we can just go ahead and load up a file and choose MPLS, tunnel, or VLAN. Again, let's go ahead and grab GRE. And we know that GRE actually has this inner and outer right here and right here, but because I'm looking at it from an MPLS perspective, from an MPLS profile view, I don't see everything I want. Change it to tunnel, and now I see everything I need. Happy Wiresharking.